The rhythmic hum of Mrs. Peterson's sewing machine was usually a comforting sound for Elara Vance. It was July 1940, and the summer heat, unusual for London, pressed down on the narrow street of terraced houses in Islington. Elara, 24, sat hunched over a bolt of drab linen, her fingers expertly guiding the fabric under the needle. The air in the small, cluttered flat was thick with the scent of cloth and the underlying tension of a city bracing itself. Every evening, the radio crackled with news of the war, its grim pronouncements casting a long shadow over daily life. The Battle of Britain had begun, and the distant drone of aircraft was becoming a familiar, chilling prelude to the wail of air raid sirens. Elara's days were a monotonous cycle of mending uniforms and civilian clothes, a small cog in the vast war machine. Her father, a quiet man who worked on the docks, had seen too much. He rarely spoke of the war, but his haunted eyes told their own story. Her younger brother Thomas, only 18, was eager to enlist, a constant source of quiet worry for Elara and their mother. The family relied on Elara's meticulous work. Every shilling she earned was crucial. As she stitched, her mind often wandered to the newsreels she'd seen, images of bombed-out cities across the Channel, and the stark realities of an enemy growing bolder by the day. She felt a frustrating helplessness, a deep yearning to contribute more than just mending seams. The city itself felt different, a collective breath held, a constant low thrum of anxiety beneath its resilient facade. The cobbled streets outside, usually bustling, now had an edge of quiet apprehension, people moving with purpose but also with a watchful caution. Even the usually predictable British weather seemed to reflect the mood, with heavy, humid days often giving way to sudden, oppressive downpours. Is this story gripping you? Don't miss a single moment of Elara's journey. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you're always updated when a new chapter drops. The monotony of mending was broken one sweltering afternoon by a visit from Mrs. Davison, a distant cousin of Elara's mother, and a formidable woman who worked for the War Office, though in what capacity, no one in the family quite knew. Mrs. Davison, usually reserved, arrived with an air of urgency. "Elara," she began, her voice low. "The War Office needs people with sharp eyes and even sharper minds. You have a reputation for meticulous detail in your sewing. But more than that, I've heard you're remarkably observant." Elara, accustomed to being seen only as a skilled seamstress, felt a flicker of surprise, then a spark of hope. Mrs. Davison produced a series of aerial reconnaissance photographs, grainy and indistinct, showing bombed-out sections of French towns. "We need to understand enemy movements, their supply lines, their choke points. These images, they tell a story, but only to those who can read between the lines." Elara looked at the photos, a jumble of ruined buildings and rubble. Mrs. Davison explained that intelligence operatives sometimes managed to send back crude maps or scraps of information about enemy strongholds and movements. The task, Mrs. Davison explained, was to cross-reference these fragmented pieces of intelligence with maps, trying to identify patterns, hidden roads, or strategic points that the official maps might miss or that the enemy might be exploiting. It was tedious, painstaking work, often leading to dead ends, but the potential impact was immense. Elara felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, a chance to use her unique talents to contribute in a way that truly mattered beyond the confines of her small flat. The fear of the sirens still lingered, but now a new feeling emerged: purpose. The air raid drills, once a symbol of helplessness, now felt like a stark reminder of the urgency of her new, unspoken mission. The sheer scale of the task was daunting, but the idea of making a tangible difference, however small, outweighed the apprehension. Elara's new work began in secret. Every evening, after a long day of sewing, she would clear a space on her small kitchen table. Mrs. Davison supplied her with a growing stack of large-scale military maps of continental Europe, particularly areas of France and the Low Countries, along with the grainy aerial photographs and scraps of information. The photographs were the most challenging. They were often blurry, taken from high altitudes and obscured by smoke or cloud cover. Elara found herself scrutinizing every shadow, every faint line that might indicate a path, a hidden track, or a makeshift bridge. Her natural meticulousness, honed by years of intricate stitching, proved to be an unexpected asset. She began to see patterns others might miss, a subtle discoloration of the ground suggesting a frequently used path, a cluster of trees that seemed to form a natural cover for a hidden road, or the unusual bend in a river that could indicate a new crossing point. She worked with an almost obsessive focus, cross-referencing features between different photographs, then against the official maps. Sometimes the information provided by operatives was just a few hastily scrawled words, a vague direction or a symbol. Elara had to piece these fragments together like a complex jigsaw puzzle, relying on logic and intuition. Her mother, noticing her late nights and the unusual intensity in her eyes, worried. "Are you working too hard, dear?" she'd ask, bringing her a cup of tea. Elara would simply smile, offering a vague explanation about a large order. The work was mentally exhausting, demanding constant concentration, but it was also exhilarating. She felt a connection, a silent partnership with the unseen pilots and agents, her efforts weaving together with theirs to form a clearer picture of the enemy's movements. The weight of the linen was replaced by the weight of responsibility, a far more welcome burden. Weeks turned into months. The autumn of 1940 brought relentless German bombing raids, the Blitz. London became a city of craters and resilience, every night a terrifying gamble. Air raid sirens became a constant shrill soundtrack to Elara's life. She often continued her work in the dim light of the bomb shelter, the rumble of explosions outside a grim accompaniment to her intense focus. Dust and debris were a constant presence, the smell of burning timber often lingering in the morning air. Yet, Elara pressed on, her determination hardening with each new challenge. Slowly, painstakingly, a new map began to emerge on her kitchen table. It wasn't a conventional map. Elara used different colored threads and tiny pins to mark her findings on a large blank sheet of paper laid over a grid, correlating it with the official military maps. Red threads for confirmed enemy supply routes, blue for suspected hidden tracks, green for potential new strongholds she'd identified through repeated aerial sightings. Each thread represented hours of scrutiny, of cross-referencing, of intuition. She'd identified several previously unmapped roads, small country lanes that the Germans appeared to be using to bypass known checkpoints, and a few areas where troop concentrations seemed higher than intelligence suggested. She even pinpointed a suspected new ammunition depot tucked away in a dense forest based on subtle changes in the tree line over several aerial photos. The scale of her work grew, covering vast swathes of occupied territory. Mrs. Davison would visit periodically, her calm demeanor hiding an increasing sense of urgency. Each time, Elara would present her latest findings, her voice firm, her explanations clear and precise. Mrs. Davison, initially skeptical of the costume mender's capabilities, grew visibly impressed. Elara's map was becoming more comprehensive, more detailed, and crucially more accurate than anything the War Office had managed to compile from their scattered sources. This is just the beginning of Elara's incredible story. Don't miss how her work changes the course of the war. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss a single chapter. One cold, fog-laden morning in late November, a black car pulled up outside Elara's modest home in Islington. Two stern-faced men in trench coats, accompanied by Mrs. Davison, emerged. Elara's heart pounded. This wasn't a routine visit. Inside, over cups of hot tea, the men introduced themselves as high-ranking officers from military intelligence. They spoke in hushed, urgent tones. "Miss Vance," one of them began, his voice gravelly. "Mrs. Davison has spoken highly of your unique contributions. We've verified several of your findings. The hidden road near Lille, for instance, proved invaluable in a recent reconnaissance mission." Elara felt a blush of pride, a sense of validation she'd never anticipated. They explained that a critical Allied operation was being planned, an offensive to disrupt a major German supply hub. Their current intelligence, while extensive, had gaps, particularly regarding the enemy's secondary routes and hidden defensive positions. They needed a complete, accurate picture, and Elara's map, with its meticulously identified hidden paths and suspected locations, was now seen as a potential game-changer. They asked her to come to Whitehall to work directly with their cartographers and intelligence analysts. The request was startling, overwhelming. Her small world of needles and threads was about to collide with the high stakes of military strategy. Leaving her family, even for a short period, was a difficult thought, but the importance of the task was undeniable. She saw the seriousness in their eyes, the weight of the war etched on their faces. This was no longer just a personal project, it was a direct contribution to the war effort, a chance to save lives. The sheer responsibility settled upon her shoulders, heavy but invigorating. One cold, fog-laden morning in late November, the kind of pervasive London fog that clung to every brick and dampened every sound, a sleek, black car pulled up silently outside Elara's modest, terraced home in Islington. Its presence was an anomaly on the quiet residential street, drawing curious glances from neighbours. Two stern-faced men in impeccably tailored trench coats, their expressions unreadable, emerged from the vehicle, accompanied by the familiar, yet now more imposing figure of Mrs. Davison. Elara, peering through her lace curtains, felt a sudden surge of adrenaline, her heart thudding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was no routine visit. The air around them seemed to crackle with an unspoken urgency. Inside the small, cosy flat, over cups of steaming, comforting tea, the men introduced themselves as high-ranking officers from military intelligence. Their voices were low, hushed, yet carried an undeniable authority. "Miss Vance," one of them began, his voice gravelly and precise, "Mrs. Davison has spoken highly of your unique contributions. We've meticulously verified several of your findings. The hidden road near Lille, for instance, proved invaluable in a recent reconnaissance mission, allowing our agents to gather crucial intelligence without detection." Elara felt a blush creep up her neck, a mixture of validation and disquiet. The abstract work of threads and pins now had real-world consequences, risking lives in occupied territories. They proceeded to explain the gravity of the situation. A critical Allied operation was being planned, a complex offensive designed to disrupt a major German supply hub deep within occupied territory. Their current intelligence, while extensive and gathered at immense cost, still contained crucial gaps, particularly regarding the enemy's secondary routes and hidden defensive positions. They spoke of the need for a complete, accurate picture, a level of detail that could only be achieved through fresh eyes and an unconventional approach. Elara's map, with its meticulously identified hidden paths, its pinpointed suspected locations, and its intuitive connections, was now seen not just as valuable, but as a potential game-changer. They asked her, not as a request but as a quiet directive, to come to Whitehall, to work directly with their experienced cartographers and intelligence analysts. The proposition was startling, overwhelming. Her small, predictable world of needles and threads was about to collide head-on with the high-stakes, life-and-death decisions of military strategy. Leaving her family, even for a short, undefined period, was a difficult thought, weighing heavily on her heart. Yet the sheer, undeniable importance of the task, the desperate need for her unique insight, outweighed her apprehension. She saw the unwavering seriousness in their eyes, the heavy burden of the war etched onto their tired faces, and knew without a doubt that she had to accept. This was no longer just a personal project, it was a direct, vital contribution to the war effort, a chance, however small, to save countless lives. The sheer magnitude of the responsibility settled upon her shoulders, a heavy cloak, but one that felt surprisingly invigorating. The imposing edifice of Whitehall stood as a stark contrast to the familiar cosy streets of Islington. It was a labyrinth of grand, imposing buildings, their stone facades exuding an aura of immense power and unwavering authority. Inside, the corridors bustled with uniformed personnel, officers with crisp salutes, secretaries hurrying with deciphered messages, and uniformed messengers with grave expressions, all moving with a quiet, almost frenetic urgency unique to wartime operations. The air thrummed with a low hum of concealed energy, the hushed intensity of critical decisions constantly being made behind closed doors. Elara, dressed in her best plain practical dress, a simple navy blue frock she'd meticulously mended herself, felt a profound sense of awe and intimidation. Every glance, every hurried step around her magnified her own perceived insignificance. She was led through a series of increasingly secure checkpoints, past armed guards and locked doors, until she arrived at a large, brightly lit room, tucked away deep within the sprawling complex. The room was dominated by enormous, intricate maps covering entire walls, stretching from floor to ceiling. Here, a team of seasoned cartographers and intelligence officers, mostly men with years of military experience etched into their faces, worked tirelessly. Their expressions were a blend of intense concentration and profound fatigue, their sleeves often rolled up, their brows furrowed as they bent over charts and documents. The air in this inner sanctum crackled with the palpable energy of critical decisions being weighed and shaped, the scent of fresh paper, ink, and stale pipe tobacco hanging heavy. Elara was introduced simply as a specialist consultant, a title that felt far grander and more formidable than her own reality as a quiet seamstress. Initially, the cartographers regarded her with polite, almost dismissive, skepticism. Their gazes, though not unkind, held a question. What could a young woman, a seamstress no less, possibly add to their highly specialized, high-stakes work? They were accustomed to battle-hardened reports, not the delicate observations of an amateur. But as Elara, with a tremor in her hands, but a steel resolve in her voice, meticulously laid out her hand-drawn map on a large table, explaining her reasoning behind each colored thread and tiny pin, their skepticism, slowly, almost imperceptibly, began to morph into professional respect. She spoke with a quiet authority, pointing out the subtle clues embedded within the grainy aerial photographs. A faint, almost imperceptible discoloration of the ground that suggested a hidden path, the unusual clustering of trees that formed perfect natural cover for concealed movements, the precise shifts in topography that hinted at an undocumented turn-off. She patiently explained how she'd cross-referenced these visual clues with the scant, often cryptic reports from agents on the ground, piecing together fragments of intelligence like intricate embroidery. Her hypotheses about enemy movements, their logistical vulnerabilities, and their likely defensive positions were not based on guesswork, but on solid, logical deductions, articulated with surprising clarity and precision. She showed them the small, almost imperceptible turn-offs she'd identified, the clusters of trees that provided perfect cover for hidden encampments, the precise location of the suspected ammunition depot she'd intuited from faint, recurring shadows. Their own detailed, comprehensive maps, while vast in scope, lacked the granular detail and the intuitive human connections Elara had painstakingly discovered through sheer dedication and a unique observational gift. Slowly, meticulously, her quiet work began to fill crucial gaps in their existing intelligence, offering new perspectives on enemy logistics and revealing previously unseen potential vulnerabilities. The abstract, overwhelming scale of the war, previously a distant concept, now felt tangible, immediate, as she worked shoulder to shoulder with those directly shaping its outcome, her threads and pins weaving into the very fabric of Allied strategy. The impact of Elara's map was immediate and utterly significant, rippling through the intelligence community at Whitehall like a powerful, unexpected wave. High-priority intelligence teams comprising daring reconnaissance pilots and covert operatives were swiftly dispatched to verify her findings, often at immense personal risk, flying dangerous missions over enemy territory or infiltrating dangerous zones. The tension in the operations room was palpable as they awaited the results. Within a mere few days, reports began filtering back, each one a stark confirmation of Elara's meticulous work. The words, terse and official, were music to the ears of the strategists. The hidden road near Caen confirmed, currently used for troop movements and bypassing known checkpoints. Then another, ammunition depot location accurate, signs of recent heavy activity, consistent with a major supply point. And yet another, just as vital, new defensive positions identified along the specified ridge, consistent with aerial observations provided by Miss Vance, providing unexpected insights into enemy fortifications. The confirmations poured in with astonishing consistency, each one solidifying Elara's credibility and underscoring the invaluable nature of her unique contribution. The polite skepticism that had initially greeted her among the seasoned military personnel vanished entirely, replaced by a profound, almost reverent appreciation for her sharp mind, her unparalleled observational skills, and her tireless, unseen dedication. Her map, once a personal project crafted in the quiet solitude of her Islington flat, now became a central, indispensable component in the planning of the upcoming, highly critical operation. Strategic discussions, previously constrained by incomplete information, now fully incorporated Elara's findings, allowing for audacious and precise adjustments. Proposed routes were altered to exploit newly identified vulnerabilities. Crucial new targets were identified that had previously been overlooked, and attack plans were refined with an unprecedented level of granular detail. She was frequently asked to explain her methodology, her unique insights, and her logical deductions, influencing high-level decisions that would determine the fate of thousands of soldiers. Elara watched, with a mix of awe and trepidation, as her delicate threads and tiny pins were translated into concrete military objectives, the lines she had painstakingly drawn now representing the precise paths soldiers would take through hostile territory, the specific targets bombs would hit with deadly accuracy. The weight of this realization was immense, a complex tapestry woven with threads of deep pride in her contribution and a somber, almost crushing awareness of the profound human cost. She knew, with chilling certainty, that her map would undeniably save British lives by guiding forces away from ambushes and towards strategic advantages. But it also meant that lives would inevitably be taken on the other side. Lives she had indirectly targeted with her precise markings. Yet the unwavering conviction that she was contributing to the essential existential cause of freedom, of stopping a tyrannical force, outweighed the personal turmoil and the quiet moral dilemmas. The operations room at Whitehall, once a daunting, intimidating place filled with strangers, now felt increasingly like a second home. A place where her quiet observations, born from countless hours of diligent scrutiny, had finally found their thunderous, impactful voice in the desperate cacophony of war. Elara's incredible contribution is changing everything for the Allied forces. But the war is far from over, and the path ahead is fraught with danger and difficult choices. To see how her meticulously crafted map impacts the crucial battles ahead, and to witness the personal challenges and emotional toll she faces as the war intensifies, subscribe to the channel right now and make sure you hit that notification bell. You absolutely won't want to miss the intense climax of this incredible true story. As the planning for the crucial operation intensified, reaching a fever pitch of detailed strategy and logistical nightmares, so too did the profound emotional toll on Elara. She found herself working grueling, seemingly endless hours, often late into the night, the only companions to her solitude the dim light of a desk lamp and the ever-present bitter warmth of strong, constantly refilled cups of tea. Her unwavering sense of duty was the only fuel keeping her going, pushing her through the haze of fatigue. The detailed discussions swirling around her, a constant hum of hushed voices and rustling papers, were filled with dense military jargon, cold, strategic calculations of troop movements, and most chillingly, the stark, brutal assessment of potential casualties. This brought the grim, undeniable reality of war into sharp, agonizing focus, stripping away any lingering abstraction. She saw, in her mind's eye, the faces of the soldiers, the young men, some barely older than her own brother, who would be relying on the precise accuracy of her drawn lines and carefully placed pins. Their lives, their futures, hinged on her meticulousness. The pressure was immense, a constant low-frequency thrumming anxiety just beneath her calm, composed exterior, threatening to unravel her focus at any moment. One particularly long, exhausting evening, as the city outside braced for another probable air raid, Elara, hunched over a new set of maps, inadvertently overheard a hushed, intense conversation between two senior officers. They were discussing a particularly dangerous diversionary attack, a tactical maneuver designed to draw enemy forces away from the main assault. The route they were planning, she realized with a cold lurch in her stomach, relied heavily, almost entirely, on one of the hidden roads she had so meticulously identified. The risk of heavy casualties for the unit undertaking this diversion was explicitly stated as high, almost certain, but it was deemed absolutely necessary to create the vital opening for the main offensive. Elara felt a tight, suffocating knot form deep in her stomach, a sickening twist of guilt and dread. Her precise knowledge, honed with the express intention of saving British lives and aiding the Allied cause, was now directly linked to placing other brave men in grave, almost certain danger. She briefly, desperately, considered if she had been too thorough, if her relentless pursuit of every hidden path and every enemy vulnerability had become a double-edged sword, inadvertently contributing to the very risks she sought to mitigate. She sought out Mrs. Davison, who listened patiently, her expression grave but understanding, as Elara poured out her anxieties, the weight of her choices pressing down on her. "Elara," Mrs. Davison said gently, her voice soft but firm, a steady anchor in the storm of Elara's turmoil, "you have given them the best possible intelligence, the clearest picture. What they do with it and the difficult, impossible choices they must make in the brutal theatre of war are theirs, not yours. Your part, your crucial contribution, is to provide truth, to expose the unseen. Without it, the risks for all involved, the potential for catastrophe, would be even greater. You have reduced uncertainty in a chaotic world." Her words, though immensely comforting and delivered with genuine empathy, didn't entirely erase the crushing weight from Elara's shoulders, but they did reinforce the undeniable necessity, the inescapable moral imperative of her vital work. She knew then, with a heavy heart but clear mind, that in war, even the most precise and vital knowledge, the most well-intentioned insights, often came with a heavy, agonizing price. The day of the highly anticipated operation dawned grey and bitterly cold, the kind of pervasive British chill that seeped into one's bones. Elara, having returned to the relative quiet of her Islington flat, but remaining on standby for any urgent clarification or last-minute questions, listened to the radio with bated breath. The usual light-hearted broadcasts of music and news were replaced by terse, coded updates, each word heavy with unspoken meaning. Hours stretched into an agonizing eternity, each tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway amplifying the suspense. The distant rumble of planes overhead, a familiar sound now, felt different, imbued with the weight of unseen actions. Then, finally, late in the afternoon, a tremor of static on the radio gave way to the voice of a BBC announcer, delivering the longed-for news. Operation Vanguard deemed a resounding success. Significant disruption of enemy supply lines reported. Crucially, casualties lighter than anticipated due to effective tactical planning and unexpected breakthroughs. A wave of profound relief, so powerful it almost brought her to her knees, washed over Elara, loosening the tension that had held her rigid for days. The hidden roads she'd painstakingly identified, the suspected ammunition depot she'd pinpointed, the precise knowledge of enemy movements she'd uncovered, it had all worked. Her map, the tangible product of countless solitary hours of meticulous effort, had directly contributed to a vital, hard-won victory. A few days later, Mrs. Davison paid another visit to Elara's flat, her usually composed face alight with a rare, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Your map, Elara," she said, her voice thick with barely suppressed emotion, a hint of reverence. "It truly saved hundreds of lives. The incredibly precise intelligence you provided allowed our forces to bypass heavily defended areas, to avoid countless ambushes, and to strike with devastating accuracy at key vulnerabilities that the enemy never anticipated. It was truly remarkable, a singular contribution." Elara felt a profound sense of accomplishment, a quiet, deep-seated pride that settled warmly within her chest, a feeling she had never known possible. She was just a seamstress, yes, but her observant eyes and diligent hands, honed by years of intricate work with fabric, had found a way to contribute to the war effort in a manner she had never, in her wildest dreams, imagined possible. The terror of the nightly bombings, the endless grinding hours of concentrated work, the gnawing personal anxieties about her family and the fate of the nation, it all culminated in this single, poignant moment of quiet triumph. The city around her, though still bearing the deep scars of the Blitz, felt a little lighter, the very air a little cleaner, imbued with the faint, fragile hope of a future finally free from conflict. With the immediate crisis of Operation Vanguard past and its success echoing quietly within the intelligence circles, Elara quietly returned to her life as a seamstress. The hum of her sewing machine once again filled her small flat, a comforting, familiar sound. Her extraordinary work at Whitehall remained strictly classified, a closely guarded secret she carried with humble pride, a powerful personal testament to her contribution. The official recognition was minimal, as was often the case for those working in the shadows of wartime intelligence. Beyond a quiet, heartfelt commendation from Mrs. Davison and the profound internal knowledge that she had truly, undeniably made a difference, there were no public accolades. Her family, still unaware of the full extent of her vital contribution, simply noticed a new, quiet confidence in her demeanor, a subtle straightening of her shoulders, a clearer light in her eyes. The war, relentlessly, continued its brutal course, but the profound knowledge that she had contributed meaningfully to the Allied cause, that her efforts had directly saved lives and advanced the cause of freedom, gave her a renewed, unshakable sense of purpose. She continued to mend uniforms for soldiers and civilians, but now the rhythmic whir of her sewing machine carried a deeper, more profound significance. Each stitch a silent act of defiance and hope. Elara Vance was never formally recognized as a public war hero. Her name would not appear in glowing newspaper headlines, nor would she receive grand, glittering medals bestowed by grateful nations. She remained, to the world, just a seamstress from Islington, a quiet observer whose meticulous nature, honed by years of intricate work with fabric and thread, had somehow allowed her to see crucial patterns and make vital connections where others, trained in traditional military intelligence, saw only chaos and disjointed information. Her story, like that of countless other unsung heroes who contributed valiantly behind the scenes, was one of quiet resilience, of extraordinary dedication, and of seemingly ordinary people rising to meet the most daunting challenges imaginable. She proved, beyond any doubt, that courage wasn't always displayed on the visible battlefields amidst explosions and gunfire, but often resided in the diligent, unseen work of those who found a way to make their unique, often unassuming talents serve a greater, more desperate cause. The victory she helped secure was not just for the army, for the generals and strategists, but for the countless ordinary lives she helped protect and preserve, making her, in the truest sense, an unsung hero of the war. And that brings us to the profound and moving end of Elara Vance's incredible story. Her quiet bravery, keen intellect, and unwavering dedication helped change the course of history, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that anyone, no matter how seemingly ordinary, can make an extraordinary difference in the face of adversity. If you were moved by Elara's powerful journey and the impact of her unseen contributions, please subscribe to the channel and leave a thoughtful comment below, sharing your reflections. Your support helps us to continue telling more vital stories of unsung heroes like Elara. Thank you so much for watching.